How's it going, folks? In today's video, I'm going to be going over and reviewing headlines and memes from the year 2020. All right, if this is your first time clicking on this channel, my name is Pablo. I'm the host. The name of my site and brand is called SIDLess, which stands for Shit You Didn't Learn in School. And I make a bunch of videos about a bunch of different topics, but I felt like with the new year coming around the corner, I figured I'd review this year because, like, for a lot of people, 2020 has been a very crazy, unprecedented year, and a lot of us have not experienced things that we've experienced in this year. So I thought I would take you through a bunch of headlines and a bunch of different stories that happened throughout the year in order, just so we could see how this whole entire year has unfolded before our very eyes, and how this really world-changing year has really affected all of us in so many different ways. And hopefully with these memes, get a few laughs at it along the way. So yeah, real quick, I brought this window up because I have a podcast, and you can find me on Anchor or any one of these different sites. Okay. Yeah, I'll keep that promotion brief, but all right, let's just jump into this. So I'm getting most of these stories from this thing called Info Please. I've already seen a few of their stories. They only pull up stories that seem to be a little politically biased, but I'm only using this site because it was convenient and they had a bunch of different stories all lined up from that one month. So that's the only reason I'm using this site, and it's only really to paint a picture of what was happening that month. So I just want to state that right now. All right, in January, we had the very beginning of the year, we are already having tensions with Iran. And I don't know if you remember, but this guy what was his name? Qasem Soleimani was killed in a drone attack in Iraq, and he's from Iran. So, the news made a big deal about it. They tried glorifying this guy because it was Trump's military that took him out. So, of course, it was good news for the Trump administration. So, of course, they couldn't let that slide. So, of course, there was a bunch of World War III memes all over the place. Let's see if I found it. Here you go. Here's a meme right here. SpongeBob one. U.S. and Iran going to World War III. Australia and Amazon. China's got some camps going on. I don't know what's going on with Australia. Philippines had a volcano freaking erupt. China's going poor. What's new? Puerto Rico had a storm. UK Brexit. If you don't know what this meme is, I am a head out meme. I'm talking about Brexit right here. And of course, all the stuff going on in Hong Kong. That's how the year started. All right. The first case of the Chinese Wuhan virus arrived in America. All right. January 21st. Okay. The first case. Okay. Around this time, Donald Trump had shut down travel from China, and they were pretty much beating him over the head with it in the news, saying, oh, he's being xenophobic and all this other nonsense, pretty much saying that what he was doing was kind of ridiculous and was not really necessary, and totally use it as a political hack against him later in the year. And I'll bring it back to that later. But oh yeah, this is another thing that happened. Do you remember that helicopter crash that happened with Kobe Bryant? That's at the end of the year. It was toward the end of the month. That's how the month ended, with Kobe Bryant dying with his 13-year-old daughter. That was shocking because it was caught on camera. It was totally random, and we were all caught up with the whole World War III headlines and stuff that, this shit happened, and we were just like, what the That's how the year started. All right. Okay, that's just U.S. news. What was going on in the world? Crash in Iran after we had already got some issues with Iran. They shot down one of their own flights. I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but there was a plane flying over Iran, and as it was flying over, I guess it was a civilian plane, and it was when tensions were high between us and Iran, and essentially by mistake, it looks like they killed a civilian plane over their own airspace, and it killed 176 people of their own citizens. And of course, people started protesting Iran because of that. And we stopped really worried about Iran because instead of them being all pissed off at us, the citizens seem to be pissed off at their own government for that. So I'm going to keep bringing this up. There was a lot of stuff going on in Venezuela this year. As you find out with the more recent news coming out, that Venezuela has been pretty busy this year. They had some stuff going on over there that, they got competing presidents, which seems a little familiar. What's going on over here? Protests in Iran. See, yeah, because of what was going on with the plane. What else we got? Coronavirus in China took off. All right. We had our first case here in America, but they're starting to really like pump up the fear porn in China about it. Lebanon has a new government. I'm going to be talking about Lebanon a lot because a lot happened in Lebanon this year. When you go through all these stories, you're like, wow, a lot happened in Lebanon. And I have a feeling that's going to play out in 2021 while this stuff happening in Lebanon. A lot of these threads are going to be completed and followed into 2021. It's just crazy to see how they unfolded throughout this year. So Lebanon had a lot of stuff going on. All right, February. What do we have? We had the caucuses going on. We were still trying to figure out who's going to be running against Trump. Trump was acquitted. That whole sham of an impeachment that they dragged us through all through 2019, it concluded, and he was not the impeachment, but he was acquitted. Well, yeah, he was acquitted of the impeachment because obviously they had nothing there. It was ridiculous. First American dies of coronavirus in February. So like, oh no, we got official death. I remember back in February, people were starting to talk about it, and back even in February, I'm just like, this seems blown out of proportion. It seems like doesn't seem anything too crazy. Like numbers don't justify it. First person in February. Okay. There was a shooting at Atlanta restaurant. There was a gas line. I forgot about this. This was really downplayed. But there's a big old explosion at a gas line in Texas, and look at that destruction. Like, we had a more recent explosion happen in Tennessee that I don't know. It's not related, but it's kind of funny how that one seemed to get more coverage than this one. Boy Scouts of America files for bankruptcy. Yeah, because of all the damn sexual assault cases coming their way. That's a recurring theme too. You saw a lot of quote unquote justice happening in a lot of organizations tied to child sex trafficking, and you'll see a lot of those different threads of stories play out throughout 2020 and going into this next year. Oh, this one this one I missed, and I'm not surprised, but I did miss this story. The Israeli prime minister was indicted for corruption charges when it came to fraud and bribery. Yeah, he also congratulated President-elect Biden. So, yeah, he's pretty knee deep in fraud. So, coronavirus spreads. Remember, they were holding people hostage on cruise ships back in February. 5 tons of drugs found in submarine. I remember this story. It was it was on they were really like starting to soak up all the headlines and all the airwaves with coronavirus news. So this got kind of buried. But I remember this story happening. 5 tons of drugs seized off the coast of Panama. Here you go. Chinese woman scares away rapist by pretending to cough and telling them she is from Wuhan. Modern problems require modern solutions. I don't know if you've seen this Dave Chappelle skit, but yeah, the fear is so bad that a man that was willing to rape another woman was more afraid of her cough than she was of him. That's kind of crazy. All right, March. This is where shit starts to take off. Personally, I know of this in March is when California was shut down. All right, because I live in California, and Gavin Newsom pretty much took the dictator. He was the first dictator to initialize these stringent lockdowns. All right, he shut down the whole state. At first, it was by county, and then he's like, "No, we're gonna do the whole state," and then the rest of the country followed. So it was March where that started. State of emergency, a lot of states. Look at that. Everybody's freaking out. That's when the masks really picked up. They got all these fake tents that no one freaking filled. The first stimulus package they passed, the biggest stimulus package ever, $1.8 trillion dollars. Back in this is March, yeah, back in March, and we just barely got the second one, or they're still talking about the second one now. But yeah, back in March is when they signed that first one. Super quick. We all got 1,200. Apparently, there's a depreciating value on this, and we lost about $600 in a matter of a few months. FDA authorizes 15-minute tests. If you've been following the news, you know these tests, not super accurate. Really not accurate at all. We shouldn't be using them. But yeah, the FDA approved it. Yeah, because we can trust the FDA, right? Yeah, they're really pumping up the coronavirus stuff by March. Olympics could be postponed. Yeah, the Olympics did not happen this year. And something about North Korea. It's like they try to keep North Korea in the news cycle, even though there's really not much going on over there. This is a perfect one. People who aren't panic buying, who generally need groceries. Yeah, I was one of these people because I was kind of stubborn and I didn't feel like I needed to go to the store to get stuff. I'm just like, no, I'm not going to be dumb, hog it up, buying all the toilet paper. I'm going to get shit when I need to get shit. But by the time I needed to get stuff, everything was gone. So I was a little upset at myself for not hopping on it, but it's not really my fault. It's all the damn panic buyers. And what happened? They're all fine. I bet you some of these people still got rolls and rolls of toilet paper in their damn basements. But anyways, April, still more coronavirus stuff. Yeah, this is when I feel like the propaganda really picked up, when they started doing commercials about it and they started getting people, healthcare workers, continue to feel like, I don't know. It was when the propaganda really started to take off. Tip leads to, this was the nursing home. Oh yeah, when they started pumping people through nursing homes with COVID and stuff in the early parts of the COVID pandemic. It wasn't just New York, but there's other states doing something similar. Like they're trying to get the numbers up, which is really sick. All right, as we come to find out later. They were really pushing for that. March and April, there's a bunch of memes of like March being like the longest month ever. March, I don't think things can get much worse. April is essentially what it was. That's how April was. I mean, it felt like just one huge month. When it came to me, so when we could leave our houses next, government, it's going to be May. Yeah, because they told us in March that we're being locked down. And yeah, then it got extended to May. All right. And you know, people were like, there's no salons are really starting to take a hit because they should have been open by now. Is 2-3 weeks flatten the curve, and it's May and they're still not open. And especially here in California, a lot of hairdressers were starting to go just to close down. They couldn't keep their business afloat for 2 months with no work. Murder hornets came to the U.S. More coronavirus stuff. People wear double masks and stuff. Like people doing full, like this crap. We're starting to see this shit everywhere. It's starting to become normal. Like by May, this is already becoming normal. And it's been downhill from there. This is when like shit really hit the fan. Was at the end of May when George Floyd incident happened. And it seemed like from that point on, we had almost at least one incident of a police shooting every month. All right. After George Floyd, I think it was those initial protests were the worst ones. All right. And June is when it really took off. But yeah, May, there's actually other protests too in May that before the racial justice protests, there was a coronavirus lockdown protests. And if you watch the news, you're having all of them shame them, saying, oh my God, look at all these horrible people trying to protest. Why aren't they staying home? Why aren't they doing this? April, May timeframe, they were ridiculing people protesting the lockdowns. But by end of May, they're all for it because we'd come to June. This was the general theme. I don't even say bless you when people sneeze anymore. I just stare at them like this. Yeah, it's exactly like the by May, June timeframe. People were just not taking, like people were just fed up with coronavirus stuff. And I actually did a video back in May about coronavirus lockdowns, and it was like maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks before the George Floyd stuff, because up until May, the whole March to May timeframe was all coronavirus. Everything, the lockdowns, the science, it was all coronavirus. And I did a video discussing whether or not it was even legally or even morally acceptable to have these lockdowns. And then I talked about science, and it was like one of my first big videos I made. It was like 40 something minutes long. Now all my videos are all that long, but that was like our first initial one. And I just talked about that kind of stuff. And then we switched to into May, and it was all the protests, Black Lives Matter, all that stuff. You could tell it was just protests everywhere. Oh yeah, and by the way, Joe Biden won the candidacy coincidentally, very conveniently, when the lockdowns and then the protests back to back. It was like this mofo snuck in there. There were so many candidates running for president against Trump. The fact that he won, it was just like, they don't even care. They don't even care. There were so many other candidates they could have chosen, and they chose this guy that doesn't even look like the real Joe Biden. That doesn't look. Go 2019 Joe Biden versus 2020 Joe Biden. They don't look alike at all. All right, just throwing it out there. CHOP. Oh my God, yeah, that freaking zone they had in Seattle where it was an autonomous zone. They allowed protesters to storm the Capitol and then set up pretty much a lawless little club in downtown Seattle where they own like several blocks, and this is what happened. And they allowed it to happen for, I think it was like almost, I forgot how long. It was at least a month. 3 people got killed. The police chief retired over it, and the police budget got shrunk during that same time period. So yeah, so June timeframe, they were tearing down statues, they were reforming things, they want to freaking rename bases. For people that didn't see this coming, this is how color revolutions start. They delete your old history and they install a new history. We saw the beginnings of that in June, right after the George Floyd protests. Uh, More protests in Lebanon because at the beginning of the year, their new government wasn't working out, and by freaking June, they were already sick of it. So they were protesting it again. Beijing, or just China. Just China's going in and out of lockdowns all year. So in June, Beijing, went through another one. Oh, this one was funny. It was not funny, but some of the stories I heard about it were kind of funny. Tensions between China and India are heating up around this time. They've been heating up progressively over the past few years, but I guess they kind of had a climax because I guess it's not just the South China Sea that China's always trying to fight over and say, oh, this is our territory, this is not our territory. They also do it with their neighbors, and they do it with India a lot, where there's several spots on the coast of their, on the border of their countries, where there's disputes, where China's like, oh, this is our land. And India's like, no, it's our land. And they kind of fight over, like, I don't know how much land it is, but it couldn't be more than acres of land, it seems like. And it's just like moving the freaking line of the border like half a mile up or something like that, where they fight over this land. Both their forces patrol that land, and on occasion their forces run into each other, and they're like, what are you doing here? This is our border. And they're like, I guess at one point the tensions were so high that there was actually a physical fight. And right here it says that there was a clash and several soldiers died. I didn't hear anything about that, but this might have been something that happened a little later, because there was an initial clash where there was no weapons or guns used, but it was a physical fight between India's soldiers and the Chinese soldiers. And from what I hear is India's soldiers whooped that Chinese ass, and China was completely embarrassed by it. I mean, there's several people hurt on both sides. I think someone got hit with like a flagpole. It seemed like a brawl between both forces. And that story I had read was that no one got killed, but there's a few injuries. I'm thinking it escalated, and these 20 Indian soldiers that died might have been retribution for that initial act, because China didn't want to, they were downplaying how bad their troops got whooped in that first fight. So I'm thinking this is their revenge. So yeah, India and China have not been the best of terms this year. And their soldiers were fighting on the border since freaking June. So we'll see where that goes. Also in India, the locust swarms that started back in Africa earlier in the year, I don't know if I skipped that story or not, they made their way to India. If you didn't know, there were locust swarms going all the way from Africa all the way through South Asia all year. A lot of biblical things happening this year. Got swarms of locusts going places. July is kind of like, July starts to get interesting. Ghislaine Maxwell got arrested, all right, who is, if you see that guy, you don't recognize him, that's Jeffrey Epstein, the one that Netflix special talked about. His story goes a lot deeper than that, but for people following the story, this is huge that she got arrested. She's in prison right now, and it seems like her trial starts, I think, in June. So we'll see where that goes in 2021. That's going to be interesting. More protests, more reforms, shootings across. Yeah, July was a bad year, month for shootings. I guess like in a lot of the, I don't want to pick on any particular area, but a lot of the Democratic run cities and states, Chicago, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., they had an uptick in violence across the board. And I think even in Chicago, I think it was like 100% increase in shootings or something. It might have been New York. It was one of the big cities. But that was a trend you saw across the country. Just shootings went up as soon as people are talking about defunding the police and all the cops have their hands tied and can't fight back. Guess what happens? And the only thing that was nice about June and the beginning of July was we weren't talking about the coronavirus as much, all right? Because there's all these protests going on. No talks of coronavirus. Didn't even care. Places are being looted. We were caring about all this other shit, all right? Yeah, gun violence. Here we go. Here's July 29th, a total of 25 people were shot in Chicago, 4 of whom died. Over the weekend, a total of 63 people were shot, 12 of whom died. On July 22nd, at least 15 people were injured after a drive-by shooting at Chicago funeral. Police have attributed many of the shootings to rising gang activity. What are you attributing to the rising gang activity? probably the rhetoric of defunding the police. I love how they try to make it seem like it's not their own political policies that are causing the problem. Now, this was interesting. I remember this happening, and it's only recently that I started to really see the significance of this. Houston's Chinese consulate to close. I remember abruptly, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, I always call him Mark, Mike Pompeo, stated that they were China was stealing intellectual property and they were shutting down their consulate in Houston. Come to find out, Mike Pompeo has been kind of going on a tour this whole year, going to either conferences or meetings or events where he's a speaker, and he's speaking to corporations, he's speaking to government agencies, he's speaking to political leaders, and he's been warning people about China all freaking year. And he actually had to shut down his Chinese consulate in July. Well, we're going to be talking more about China the rest of the year, because China is a lot more involved in our affairs than a lot of people realize. So, oh yeah, they were talking about don't get these seeds from China. I remember that U.S. Department of Agriculture had reported that seeds appeared to be from China and may be harmful to surrounding plants. Yeah, they're saying that China was trying to sell us poisonous seeds. It's like, from China. Oh yeah, this was very suspect. The story was in the news for like a day. But Seoul, which is the capital of South Korea, their mayor died after he was accused of sexual assault. And then just later that day, I guess he went missing and left a call to his daughter or something like that. And then she reported him missing, and they found him dead in the park. So a little fishy, very suspect. I don't know if we're ever going to get closure with this story, if it's tied to something bigger or whatever. But it was very interesting, to say the least. Violence. It's just like, we're just all this chaos, and it just, guys, we're kind of at this part starting to become numb. By I think July, it's starting to become very numbing, all this drama going on right now. At least so it was for me. Oh yeah, I don't know if you could tell right here, but these are fireworks in July. I remember they had banned fireworks and just fun on 4th of July. And then there was that footage of LA on 4th of July of just fireworks throughout the whole city. It was kind of like, I saw a meme that said, California government, no fireworks this year, stay inside. And then underneath it said, Californians, hold my beer. And then it just shows all the fireworks, kind of like, yeah, at this point, everybody's already sick of the lockdowns. People are sick of all the rules. People are just sick of it. And that was July, and it's December now, and we're still dealing with this shit. So you can kind of see as this year is drawn on, just like where the anger and the frustration, everybody's energy's been all year. It's been up. It's been on this freaking roller coaster all year of all this crazy stuff happening back to back to back. August. This lady, I don't know if Salon-gate happened yet. It was August or September. She got caught at the salon breaking her own coronavirus rules, but whatever. Oh, yeah. And then we finally figure out who the vice presidential candidate is. And they literally picked the other worst candidate they could have picked. Like, if Joe Biden was the worst, Kamala Harris was the second worst. And honestly, it seems like nobody wants Joe, and a lot of people wanted her, even though she did horrible in the debates and Tulsi Gabbard straight destroyed her. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard only became famous because of her takedown of Kamala Harris, I feel like. And yeah, she's one of the most cringy people I've ever seen on TV. She's not a good politician, but maybe that's why they're picking her. Yeah, and the mailbox gate started. They're saying that Trump's trying to steal the election. Yeah, all of this stuff was happening. They're trying to say that Trump is trying to steal the election by getting rid of mail-in voting, which is funny in hindsight. That when you look back and you see, you know what? Now we see what they were doing. They were trying to make it seem like it was Trump that was trying to steal the election, but no, they were the ones stealing the election. And if you want to argue over that, go ahead, but we already know the truth. He stole it. I'm not even going to dignify your response that, no, he didn't steal it. Yeah, he stole it. Using mail-in voting. It's pretty obvious now. Let's just end here on a good note, okay? All right, this is what I covered on my podcast that I feel a lot of people weren't talking about when it happened because of all this other shit. But explosion in Beirut, that freaking nuclear freaking looking blast that happened, that just like was just crazy. It just came out of nowhere. Leveled all of downtown. Lebanon wasn't already having a bad year. This explosion that killed 135 people and injured 5,000. Yeah, it was just cherry on top. And there was still a third of 2020 left after this. Like, yeah. Bali president arrested. Yeah. So as you can see, there's protests and just government regime changes going all over the world right now that we're not really hearing about here in America. Of course, got to keep North Korea in the news. Kim Jong-un allegedly in a coma. Why do we keep talking about this guy? I mean, like, there's like so little going on with North Korea. With all this other shit, they still want to keep talking about North Korea. It's kind of like we need to keep that bad guy in the background for us to, target all our propaganda against, Japan's prime minister resigns. I don't know. This is also kind of fishy. China launches missiles. And this is interesting. If you read the freaking description, on August 29th, U.S. defense officials reported that China had fired ballistic missiles into the South China Sea. The country had been practicing various military exercises, and officials believe the missiles are carrier killers. I remember they kept putting that in there, carrier killers, in all the headlines. It's like, why are they trying to scare us, all right? Or are they trying to say, like, oh, our Navy isn't shit? Well, if you don't know, currently, right now as I speak, you have carrier groups off the coast of the United States, off the west and east coast. We have battle groups over there stationed. That's not a normal thing. We don't usually have our carrier groups over. They're usually more spread around along the globe, but we've never had them amassed on the borders like or the coast like that. Just saying, all this stuff going on in China. I just did a video last week called U.S. is on the brink of war with China. If you're curious about how deep this goes with China, go ahead. I encourage you to watch that video because, I mean, them practicing that back in August tells me that they have been planning something for a while, because it's freaking December now and we got carriers off the coast of our country, and we all suspect that China's been meddling with our election. So I don't know. Keep your eyes open for that. 2021 could be very interesting. Yeah, more protests with freaking September. They get ridiculous. Like, there's just videos, these guys just stopping in the middle of the freeway, trying to cause an accident, just doing stupid, not good protesting. There's good peaceful protests, and then there's stupid peaceful protests, like standing in the middle of a freeway. It's peaceful in the sense that you're not destroying anything, but it's extremely dangerous and stupid. But that's just personal opinion. BLM protest enters 100th night. Yeah, Portland, if people didn't know this, there are over 100 nights consecutive of riots. It's a 100th protest. No, they're riots those freaking nights. Okay, they were trying to destroy the city building. They're trying to destroy the police station. Just kept, like, Trump. This is when Trump had to send in the federal agents, and of course they called them stormtroopers. Always trying to compare Trump to Hitler. They're always trying to draw those two connections together. And in reality, these BLM protesters are more like the brown shirts of Hitler. And they're the ones that are acting fascists, all right? Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. This was one that kind of out of left field and would set the stage for October being really dramatic, all right? For people who don't understand the significance of this, the Supreme Court they call it a 5-4 conservative split, where one of the judges from the Supreme Court, she's a liberal, she'd passed away, which means that Donald Trump gets to pick her replacement, which means going into the election, the Supreme Court was going to have a conservative majority. For whatever reason, everybody on the Democratic side was freaking out, all right? Why would they freak out? Why would it matter what the majority is? If your boy is going to get elected, then he's just going to appoint the next judge. Why is it an issue? Well, I think the reason it's an issue is because the Supreme Court's been at the forefront of a lot of headlines the past month and a half because of this election. And I think they knew that there was going to be a lot of election drama going on at this time of the year. And they were freaking out because they thought, well, worst comes to worst, we're going to have a liberal majority in the Supreme Court. So it won't really matter. Any case that gets thrown there will just be tossed back down because we're going to have the majority, right? They're playing politics with the court. This is why they're freaking out. And now, we got a new judge. But here you go. Appoints Amy Coney Barrett. Yep, appoints her. And they say that Republicans hold a 6-3 advantage. That's actually not true, because one of the conservatives, John Roberts, is not really a conservative. He votes almost exclusively with his liberal cohorts. So it's a 5-4 majority. But even then, I mean, All this stuff with the Supreme Court, it's funny now in hindsight how much faith people had put in the Supreme Court. It comes to show that even that office has been tainted. Yeah, they had the first debate, which was a complete sham. These two guys, if you go back and watch that first debate, they kept saying that Trump kept interrupting. And toward the end, he was. But if you watch it from the beginning all the way through, Joe Biden interrupts first. Trump doesn't do nothing. Chris Wallace interrupts. It was after Chris Wallace interrupted President Trump that President Trump just said, fuck it. I guess I'm just going to start interrupting you guys. And then, of course, we all know how it went from there. What else happened in September? More coronavirus. Belarus protests continue. Hong Kong protests continue. China and India protests continue. Protests emerge in South Africa. Yellow vest protests. See, the protests were kicking up around in September. People don't realize what was going on. Venezuela accused of crimes against humanity. Interesting. Venezuela is being brought up a lot in recent times. And if they're associated with crimes against humanity, I don't think you want anything to do with Venezuela, but we'll see what happens. Oh, yeah. You got the fiery but mostly peaceful wildfires destroyed California. Oh, crap. I didn't really see that, but the wildfires here in California had gotten really bad. It was either August or September, and it got so bad that the sky was literally blotted out over here in California for like weeks. It looked like fog, but it didn't smell like fog. And with fog, you kind of get like a certain hue, kind of like a grayish hue. The sky looked gray like fog, but the hue of the sun going through it was reddish. So it didn't feel like fog. It was warm. Fog's usually cold here in California. It was summer, so it looked like fog, but it wasn't freaking fog. The freaking sky was blotted out from all the damn smoke from all the wildfires. And there were several days where you look up at the sky and you just saw like the sun poking through the fog. The smoke. And it was just red. It just really ominous looking, man. It was, if you got locusts going on in one part of the world and then you're having the sun blotted out of the sky in another part of the world, 2020 was just throwing every biblical reference it could at us. October, President Trump gets coronavirus, which threw everybody through a loop. But I think what threw more people through the loop is how he handled it and how he got better in a few days. People were super pissed off. Everybody was happy he was sick. They were wishing death on him in Twitter. And then when he got better right away, they were pissed off he got better. It's like, oh man, it's funny. Still more protests. Still protesting this whole time since June into May. They've been allowing these protests, but not allowing businesses to open up. Funny, huh? World news around that time, Kuwait monarch dies. There's a lot of leaders resigning. Yeah, see another one right here. A lot of leaders resigning or dying during this time. I don't think that's a coincidence. Protests, another country protests. More protests in Nigeria that time. More coronavirus, more protests. Coronavirus, protests. There's a little theme going on. Oh, and then they finally reached a peace deal with Sudan and Israel. All right. But some more protests in Poland. Like the only good news during October was this. Oh, and another thing that broke in October. The Hunter Biden story. The whole story they ignored in the media that points to just how corrupt the Biden family is. Completely ignored. Twitter goes in full censorship mode. They started censoring the president's tweets back in July. But in October, they go full-blown, just not letting anyone tweet or post or do anything with that Hunter Biden story. And it's only gotten worse since then. So y'all got any more of them Burisma holding jobs? Yeah, that sums up October right there. November. Okay, this is when the election took off. And, of course, we all know what happened with that. They're projecting Joe Biden the winner. We all know that's not true. Leading up to the election, we saw how well Joe Biden was doing in rallies and polling was totally skewed, wasn't even close to being correct, and he wasn't holding rallies for anybody. Trump was throwing record crowds everywhere he went, and he would have in record crowds for places he'd even go. Like there was I think it was a 97-mile long Trump train in Arizona. And it's funny that on election night, Arizona super early got called for Joe Biden by Fox News of all places, which threw a lot of people through a loop. November was the start of the downfall of Fox News because leading up all year, Fox News was like people's outlet. He had a lot of famous people on there like Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity that people liked. That after that night, Fox News has, since election night, I think Fox has lost 40% of its audience or something like that. Something close to that number. But damn near half of the people that were watching them just stopped watching them completely after that because we all saw what side they were on. So this was the beginning of the shit show. People were expecting, including myself, because, I voted for Trump, and, we were expecting to celebrate. We were expecting to be like, freaking told you he was the best president ever. Yeah, it's 75 million votes, which is a record. Blew Obama out of the water. But because they're claiming that Joe Biden won even more, this huge accomplishment, they've totally thrown water on the fire of it, and just really killed and stole the thunder of a lot of Trump supporters. And he still needs to be celebrated for that. He's the only, not the only, but I think he has gotten the most votes of any sitting president, because in most cases sitting presidents don't win as many votes in their reelection bid as they did initially, and Trump actually got way more votes this time around than he did the first time. So that's a huge sign that he's actually a very liked president, but because Joe freaking stole the election, no one knows that yet. So yeah, the media has continued the narrative that Trump's a hated person. All right. And that brings us, protests emerge across the world. Yeah, because of what was going on. This is perfect. 2016. That's not fair. Hillary didn't win. Russia rigged the election. 2020. There's no voter fraud. That's just a right-wing conspiracy theory, and Trump is a sore loser. Funny how quick that twisted around. I spent the last 4 years trying to convince us that the last election was not safe, only for this one to have the least safeguards in place possible and be like, oh no, it's totally safe. Also, Arizona, Nevada. I don't know if you know this, but that's exactly how I feel, and a lot of people felt all of November. And that brings us to December, the last month of the year. I feel like, oh man, this is one good law. I mean, a piece of news that might come out is this law that they're going to do anti-doping laws for it. But what they think they're going to do is they're going to decriminalize cannabis finally. Here in California, it's already decriminalized, but they're going to do it federally, which means it'll be legal everywhere, or at least decriminalized. This doesn't necessarily mean they're going to allow it, but it's not going to be criminalized, which opens the door for it going everywhere else. We still don't know who won. A whole month later, we know who won. I should take that back. We know who won, but we're being lied to. Coronavirus vaccine, it's finally here. All these time else corona, we should finally get the vaccine. And as of what we know now, we think several people have died taking it. I can't prove that, don't got it, but there's a lady that passed out taking it live on camera, and no one's heard from her since. They said she recovered, but no picture, no testimony, none. We have no idea where this lady is. Kind of fishy. I saw another video of a lady who got Bell's palsy from taking the vaccine. So we'll see where this vaccine goes. It doesn't seem legit. And office of the president-elect. Oh yeah, December they started this new office called, I think it was in November actually, the office of the president-elect, a fake office to really just show the whole world just how fake the news is, and to end the year with a bang by making up an entirely new office. Like, oh yeah, and they try making a big deal of Trump pardoning 15 people. Well, you want to know something? I found a little graph here to put this in perspective. This is a graph of all the other presidents since Roosevelt and how many people they pardoned and communicated sentences. And if you noticed a little trend here, Trump, compared to all other presidents since 1933, had the least amount of pardons by far. Obama had a hell of a lot more and way more communications. And I think if you notice a trend here too, that the most hardcore liberal Democrat had the most pardons, and the least most capitalistic guy here, the dictator, barely pardoned anybody. All right, because he felt like it wasn't needed. All right, but yet you see stories like that. Pardons 15 people. Yeah, people. It's if 2020's taught us anything, for people that were iffy about whether or not fake news was a thing, this year convinced me. This year really showed me that, 2020 was not, it was a wake up year. It was 2020 hindsight. is really showing us this year. Just, yeah, we've been lied to for a long time. Everything's a freaking lie. Everything is. It's like, it's crazy. You can't even fake this shit. The vaccines, just, oh my God. And there's all this shit. All like, we're going into 2021 with all this. Last January, they were talking about World War III with Iran. This January coming up, I have a feeling it's going to be World War III with China. And it might actually happen. I mean, there are reports of all kinds of crazy stuff going on with China, of just all this stuff I showed you this year. They're practicing shooting carriers out of the ocean. They've had border disputes, not just in the South China Sea, but with their neighbors. They released the Wuhan virus. They released those poison seeds. It's, if anything, 2020 was the year that showed us China's true colors. All right. Trump's been talking about China his entire presidency, and people didn't take him serious because he was Trump. But I woke up this year from all the crazy stories that happened, from the lockdowns to these crazy protests. I'm trying to take down statues. Them trying to convince us Joe Biden's a good guy when it's obvious he isn't. Like, this year was a wake up year. And honestly, I have a feeling that 2021 is going to be a bigger wake up year than even 2020 was. 2020 was like the precursor. It's like, this is how you start off a decade. All right. 9/11 started off the last decade. I mean, not the decade before that, and just set the tone for 2 decades. 2020, I feel like this is going to set the tone for even longer than that. And 2021 is going to prove me right when all this other shit happens. So I'll leave it there. I thought it was funny. Really end us on a meme. Yeah, Bidens are not for sale. It's true. We already bought them. It's been a theme of this month. Just finding out, putting all the pieces together, finding out China's been behind everything. And yeah, we're going to find out in 2021 just how deep it goes. So I'm going to end it here. I was hoping to make this a little funnier, but going through 2020, it just reminds me of how crazy of a year it's been. And hopefully this year, this upcoming year is different. I believe it will be, and I believe it will be a much better year, but it's not going to be easy. I'll end it there. I hope you all found this enlightening and got to visit and relive some parts of 2020 with me, and hopefully next year when I do this for 2021, it's a hell of a lot better. So I end it there. You have a good one.